Well, everyone, we're gonna get started. If some other people join in as I'm going, that's fine. There should also be plenty of time for questions at the end. So, um, welcome to my session, tips and tricks for handling Jira Naysayers. I am Clark Everson. I'm a senior Jira admin as well as an Atlassian community leader. I've worked at a couple different sized companies, ranging from a couple hundred people to thousands of people, and also consulted on some instances of varying sizes. I've worked in both instances that are public facing and non-public facing. So I've dealt with varying degrees of problems you can face with Jira. What we're going to be talking about today is what Jira can really do for you and what the point of getting Jira is in a company, as well as the issues that stakeholders have when you're trying to either onboard it or trying to take Jira and make it usable again, and how to get through those issues. Either if you're lucky from the beginning, if you're not lucky, inherited, whether that be a couple of years old or 20 years old. So let's get started. So what Jira can do for you. So Jira is designed to be a teamwork-based tool. It's there to allow for teams of varying sizes to work better together. And as you can see, I do have teamwork and cross-team collaboration separated. And this is because Jira, first and foremost, is there for teams to work in Agile and then work together on their different work structures. However, Jira has functionalities in it now that it didn't when Jira first came out, for cross-team collaboration, in which different teams can utilize functions like boards or dashboards. And this is also tying into visualization, or advanced roadmaps if you're on data center or have Jira Premium. And this allows for teams to collaborate together, which in turn means that you can have multiple projects that all function from one board. So if you have a team that is cross-functional, that team can visualize their work in one place. And then you have visualization. So the visualization, many different ways to go about it. You can visualize your work in the classic Jira way of Jira Core. If you're on cloud, Jira Core has been enhanced and is now work management. I personally haven't really used work management, so I can't speak too much to it, but I do know it's brought some great visualization and productivity functionalities for people that aren't software focused or product focused, but more in like finance or marketing, that side of the business. And then you also have dashboards. So some people function out of dashboards. At my company, we have some nice dashboards that really allow for people to see only their work. People have filters. I have plenty of filters where I can just go and I can click and I can see the work I need to work on. And then you have roadmaps where you can go and you can visualize it at a higher level. You can, if you're using roadmaps to its fullest extent, use that to increase or plan your sprints. So you can also use them in tandem. So you can use boards to do sprint planning. You can use roadmaps to do sprint planning, because you can put your cross-functional teams inside of roadmaps and provide that time. So all of this sounds really good. Jira, very great at teamwork. It's very good at expanding and allowing teams to collaborate together. It provides many different options for visualization and productivity. So productivity, like you can be a person that really likes that old school core Jira functionality way. If you're in Jira Cloud, you can integrate it with Slack and you can get alerts to Slack and work from Slack if you want. You can go through the board methodology and set up your own board even if you wanted, where you see all of your issues from different projects. As long as you have proper permissions in those projects, you can use them throughout. Especially in cloud, you can make your own board without actually needing to have a project that it lives in. You can do it from the Atlassian's main page. And then you can also look at it from roadmaps as well as the dashboards. So provides and email even. So some people still like using email. I will acknowledge that. I personally do not, but some people like to work from email. And you can reply to your tickets from email and keep them moving as well. And depending on the webhooks you've applied, you could potentially even have your issues move to the next stages based on responses in email using automation for Jira. So in short, it provides a lot of functionality for a lot of different teams to work, which all sounds great. And it's one of the easiest reasons that allows for people to then want to buy Jira and start using Jira at their company with all these great functionalities. And also the fact that when you look at Jira from a per cost basis at an IT department, Jira is a very good purchase, because when you look at other tools like Smartsheets or other things like that, they're really great tools. I've used Smartsheet myself and I loved it, but it's really expensive per user. Jira is a lot cheaper, so it has a lot of these functionalities, so it sounds really great. But then you're starting to use Jira and you start running into problems. And this is where you're starting to deal with stakeholders. And this can either be from a standpoint of getting Jira up and running and what people have experienced at past companies and what they're worried about, or if you're currently using a Jira instance and your Jira instance has been there a while, people then potentially have problems with where you are now. They may have been at the company for 10 or 15 years. They feel forced to use Jira. Jira doesn't work the way they want. It doesn't allow for as much collaboration or customization as they think they need. So these are the main stakeholder problems that you often deal with at the top level. Navigation, whether that be they don't understand how Jira works, they don't understand why they can't move an issue because of permissions. They feel that screens are clunky. There's so many different navigation problems that can lead to people feeling like Jira doesn't work for them. Then you have collaboration. And so, which is funny, right? Because collaboration is also one of the reasons you probably got Jira in the first place, but teams can't work together. And that often could be as simple as you've taken 3 different projects and put them on one board, but those same people that have permissions in project A don't have permissions in B and C, but they're now on a board that has projects A, B, and C. And so you need to have ways to work around that. From there, then you have visualization, and with that collaboration, everything looks good, but when you go to try to use it, it just isn't working, right? So you have your visualization, and the visualization might look right, but then you can't use it. So then you're wondering what's going on. So it's preventing collaboration. It's also preventing usability. Visualization, if done improperly as well, your dashboard could have way too many issues on it. It could be very clunky in regards of feel. I know different people have different opinions on this. Personally, when I think of a dashboard, I need to be able to see everything on the dashboard on one page. Otherwise, I need a new dashboard. Some people like having really long dashboards that scroll. I'm personally not one of those people. I think of if I can fit it on a TV, and because I have a very big monitor, then if I can fit the widget there, it's good. So some of those feel unusable. Sometimes they don't necessarily feel that the visualization that they're seeing in like emails, for instance, because you can change email templates, it's not giving them the information they need, which is then preventing them from actually doing their work again. And it comes back to navigation. If you have to take 5 clicks to do something versus being able to do it in 1 click, a lot of times people feel that the navigation is poor, and it prevents them from using it the way they want. And so they may prefer these other tools. And so you're now dealing with all of these problems that people have for a lot of the times, the same reasons you bought the tool in the first place. And this is where we're getting to of why we're here. It's how do you get around dealing with the problems that users have? What is the best way? And so I'm going to move on. So solving the problems here. So I've dealt with this at 2 different companies. At the first company I was at, they had about a 5-year-old instance, I would say. I believe they used Jira right from the get-go and founding of the company, and didn't have that many users in it. Lo and behold, considering how large of an instance I work on now. But they had a lot of workflows and a lot of customizations and a lot of other things. And so a lot of people were frustrated with it. So we had to, and even my previous manager disliked Jira, and now he loves it. And then we also have the company I work at now. They had 2 15-year-old instances, very, very large, 20,000 plus user instances. They're also public for some of the instances. because we do have more than one. But in both cases, working together, in short, and we'll dive in a second, is what allows you to then make Jira what it needs to be and help. And you're going to be going through. So I've written these steps out. They're not necessarily always done in the same order depending on the company you're at, but you're always going to be rotating through them. So what you're going to start out with, no matter where you are, and if you're lucky enough to do this on a new instance, that's great. I would be a little envious of you, but you start out by defining. So when you're setting up a Jira instance, or if you're going back and fixing a Jira instance, you want to find out who your users are. So at your company, does that mean that, well, we did allow Jira to be used for everybody, but now we're only allowing it to be used for engineers? Are we allowing Jira to be used for everybody? If we're allowing it, and if you're dealing with it was used for everybody and now it's only engineers, you want to start talking to the engineering teams, the UI teams, and those types of people, product teams as well, because they're going to be collaborating with engineers quite often. If you're opening it up to everybody, you need to talk to marketing, finance, and you need to find out what they didn't like about the tool. So you have to define your user base, and then you have to define what problems those people have. So you go to those user bases and you get information from all different levels. So you can do this in varying ways. You can send out a survey and say, hey, and if you're doing it with multiple teams, maybe you take that survey and you tailor the message to each team and you send it out to gather the feedback. You could potentially set up meetings if you're at a smaller company where what I did the first time around was I sent out an email saying, hey, I want to make Jira a better experience for people. I'm putting together a advisory team to help with this process, both experienced users as well as people that have previously admined, who's interested in helping with this. And so I put together a team there, and we would meet and we would come up with ideas. We would share those ideas out. You can do that on a larger scale, or you could just generally gather feedback. So sometimes on certain things, I've generally just sent out a survey and said, what do you guys think? So you gather all that information by defining who you're looking for, and then defining what all the problems are. Once you have all the problems, you then are going to need to simplify them and demonstrate them. So by simplifying them, it's putting them in the bucket. So have a list of all your problems. For instance, let's take screens, for instance. Maybe the feedback you got on screens was it had too many fields. Well, you then want to find out what those fields are that people actually need. So you demonstrate to them what this field could actually look like. This may be something as maybe you had 20 teams and they all needed the same core 10 fields. But other than that, those 20 teams had different fields they needed. So you go and look at your Jira instance. You realize, like many cases, all your fields are global. Well, those 10 fields that everybody needs, you probably leave global because all those teams are using it and other teams are probably going to want them too. The other fields, though, you lock down to the teams that asked for them. So now you've gone down to having one screen for everyone, but they all get the fields they wanted. And then you share that to them. But from there, when you go back and you start collaborating and demonstrating to them how that worked, you get feedback that they're not in the right order. And maybe 4 different teams wanted them in slightly different orders, but they're close enough that you can put it in an order that you can then take that feedback, demonstrate it again, and get it in a way that works for everybody. So it's really about going through, and you're going to iterate every single time you go back and do it. But then you have to remember what you did. So with screens, you did all of that and you iterated and you finally got something everybody liked. So then you need to educate. And this education here comes down to a few different parts. So it's educate for new users, but it's also educating to remember yourself. And this is where it comes down to documentation. So you want to document everything you did. If it was screens, you document what the global fields are, you document what the optional fields are. And you can work with those stakeholders from those departments to potentially say, document what fields are on all your projects. Depending on the tool set you have, you may even be able to automate that. And then once you have that documentation, when people come back and say, these screens aren't working, and you ask again, to get the feedback again about what's not working for those different teams, you are able to then take that feedback again, define the problems over again, go back to all the stakeholders, share what the current process is, share what you think the future process should be, and then iterate it again. But you're now using the same structure and teams are working similarly, which in turn brings back collaboration and makes the tool something that people want to work with. Another big one is workflows. So you have to do that with workflows. So if you were defining workflows, you would go back and you would potentially from there find out how many steps. That would be the first thing I would do, is get all the feedback about what people are trying to do with workflows. And from there, take all that feedback and figure out what the highest number of steps is that people use. The reason you want to find the highest number of steps is, let's say it's 10. And in a lot of Atlassian documentation, it says, unless you're doing automation, don't go over 7. So if they're over 7 and there's automation, great. If they're not, then you may want to ask some follow-up questions, but it can get tricky there. If there's automation, you can do however many steps you want. So from there, you then need to either cut down or you need to start naming those steps. So you then get together people and from different departments. So let's say hypothetically, this was a Jira instance that had every department in the company working on it. Well, I would then reach out and get stakeholders from every single part and form a group that was willing to work on improving it based on the feedback we had. That group can help make the names for those 10 steps. Once you have the 10 steps, it's much easier to make the workflows for 2-step, 3-step, 4-step, 5-step, 6-step, 7-step, 8-step, 9-step than it is to try to come up with names later on, just based on experience. But if you can get all the teams to agree on names, even if you have to reach out to more people to verify and get feedback on them again, it's going to be a lot easier than to make workflows that people can collaborate on, which then workflows control boards. So by having workflows that people are working similarly on, the boards, when you have that cross-team collaboration, they're just going to work. Whereas, let's say your columns in your board were to do, in progress, review, done, and team A had that as their actual statuses, but team B had new, in progress, review pending, and then like closed, right? So completely different names. Well, if you then have all of those statuses on a board in a 4-column board, and some people have access to both projects, depending on the issues that are moving around, they're going to see different status names. And sometimes just the human brain gets confused by that. And they're like, why does it say something different? And they don't realize they can still just move it to the column. So by simplifying it and coming up with standards there, you are now improving all of those original objectives that you've set out. And really, by working with your stakeholders, that's the big thing here, is make sure to work with your stakeholders, make Jira the tool that you want it to be, and set the expectations of how long it's going to take. So if you're at a smaller company, it may take less time. But from there, you can go here. So at this point, we're going to be getting ready to open up for questions. And if anybody has questions on what these steps could look like or any more specific examples, I've worked on all different types of schemes, so I can give very specific examples about any of them, or problems that you've run into, or how to get through them. I've worked through a lot of those as well. Yeah, so if anyone has questions, you can post them in the chat. We can answer them. You will also be able to reach out to me after this. I have different methods of Messenger, LinkedIn, they'll be able to share. So the question here is, do you have any good examples of questionnaires? We are finding it easy for people to say that they don't like Jira, but not so easy to find out why. Yeah, so I personally use Google Forms for this. And then this is where a working group is really important. So the first questionnaire I would start out with in my, if you're having a lot of trouble with it and you have, depending on, I don't know what your user base is like, but depending on how large your user base is, I would personally send out an email saying, hey, we're getting a lot of feedback here about people not liking Jira. I want to put together a team. Okay, so 20K, similar to mine. We want to put together a team of 10 users or whatever that's going to start talking about these issues. I personally, in my current company, we have docs people. If you have any docs people that you're friends with, work with them. And basically the questions I like, screens is an example of one actually I just did. So we sent out a question of, are the screens working for you? If people say yes or no, then we would ask why. And so I separated it out by create, edit, and view. And I said, so then we separated it out by create, edit, view. So I asked the same question for all three, create, edit, and view, which was, are there the correct number of fields on this screen? And we actually have the same screen for all three right now, but the three answers I asked were, what are your, is it too many, too few, or just right? So interestingly, some people thought it was just right for view, but too many for create or edit or whatever. So it was very, very weird to see that. But then from there, I also asked, what were the top 5 fields that you have? And and then based off that question, the feedback I got was, what are the 5 least useful fields that you have? And then we just had a general input for additional information. So far we've gotten about 15 responses, but then I opened it up to a lot more people. And interestingly, some of the fields that people don't like are the fields that actually have really good purposes. And so from there, I was able to realize that we just don't have good enough documentation on it. So it's really on the surveys, have an open-ended question at the end for more feedback, but I would ask specific, and I would break it down by scheme is how I would do it. I wouldn't do one really long survey. If you do one really long survey, you're going to probably disengage people. So I would pick a scheme to start with. I picked screens because we've gotten a lot of feedback on them personally. But let's say you started working with workflows, right? I would ask, do you find it easy to move issues in Jira? That would be the first question I ask. And if people say, no, I don't find it easy to move issues in Jira, then the next question could be along the lines of, are there too many statuses? And then you can ask, then you can say, and give them multiple choice. There's just the right amount, there's too few, or there's too many. So going along those lines of asking too few, too many, ask them if any statuses don't make sense. And then have them give you the couple that don't make sense so that you can see if the names just don't make sense. If you're doing issue types, depending on if you're using roadmaps or not, there's also hierarchy involved in roadmaps. So you would ask how many are there there's going to be probably too many issue types at most companies, but I would ask specific feedback around how do you envision a hierarchy looking like, would be the question, and give them like 5 lines to fill in. And have them fill that in. So you'd want, and maybe 6, depending on how long you need your hierarchy to be. So you'd have above epic, issue type, subtask, and you might have a couple above epic. So you want to get those names and see if you have any commonalities, because then when you start going and looking back at their projects, you're probably going to notice that nobody has those commonalities, or they're going to have them in slightly different orders. But I would tackle each one at a time. The first one I may suggest, if you don't have a working group already, is find out what I would start a survey where it's what is the biggest problem you have with Jira, and just do like a 1-question survey and say screens, moving issues in Jira, issue type selection, like ask them those specifically. And then from there, once you've gotten that one question survey, work on that first thing. Once you work on that first thing, then do the second, then do the third. And you may not actually go and execute and fix it, but do the surveys one at a time to gather the information. And then come up with a plan around it and share that out with your company. So it's really just about breaking them down into questions people can ask, but don't leave the questions open. Give them an open-ended question, but don't make all the questions open-ended. So like one open-ended question is good. But outside of one open-ended question, like what are your problems that you're seeing? You don't want to have too many. Otherwise people won't answer. Even the open-ended question I asked at the end, I got very few responses on it, or the one I got was something that we couldn't do. So that's what you just need to be mindful of. Are there any other questions? And yes, I saw your comment about docs. Having docs people can be nice there. They're very helpful. I will give it one more minute to see if a question comes through because I know you guys have to type them. And then I will wrap it up. Okay. So yeah, to wrap up, just in summary, it's really about working with your stakeholders and finding out what the problems are, so that you can make Jira work for them. The stakeholders are the most important part. And a lot of people forget that the stakeholders are the most important part. So from there, you wanna work on them. You wanna work with them. If you can get them involved, get them involved. And then from there, surveys are an easy way to go, but don't ask open-ended questions because open-ended questions will not help. If you click back here, if you guys do have any questions later on, you can scan my QR code here. My QR code will give you like the 4 different ways to contact me. I don't think I put email on there. If I did, I may respond to email. I'm a little slower on email. So any of the other methods, I will get back to you fairly quickly. I'm in general on some app almost all the time. Everybody have a great rest, or see some more great sessions. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I will leave this slide up for a couple more minutes while I go off video, but feel free to reach out to me.